Welcome everyone. I will continue to put the attendance and the resources into the chat box for you. As people are filtering and coming in, we'll start off slowly. Welcome to November 29th, our decoding and encoding, looking at phonemic awareness, phonics, and morphology for secondary students. So we do start with a welcome. And if for those of you who've been with us before, we will pause and let you read this or comment on it if you'd like. And I'm going to pull a poll on asking if we have anyone new today. I'll just give everyone a moment with that. We do have some new people, so that's great to know. At least a couple, that's all we need. Well, we have 3. So that gives us a little bit of information so we know how much to just kind of go through some of the background things and let you know how to access resources. All right, so I'll end that poll. I stopped it at 72%, but you can see we already have almost equal numbers between new and people who've been here before. So welcome, everyone. All right, so we're going to get started with a land acknowledgement. I think I heard a noise, so I'm going to make sure that everyone is muted upon entry, so that if people don't realize that they're not muted, there we go. Everyone can unmute anytime you'd like, but now we won't get distracting things as people are coming in. All right, so this is a tribal land acknowledgement. I'm going to put in a resource for you about Project 562. We hope to always be weaving through our consciousness as well as our practice, a land, a labor, a recognition of what has gone before, those upon whose lands we are standing, and the sovereignty of affirming tribal sovereignty, and recognizing and connecting with our neighboring tribes and services. Thanks, Paul. Please feel free to add in your own acknowledgement if you'd like, and any resources that you have to share. This one we got from one of our colleagues, though, and I really appreciate that acknowledgement by itself is a small gesture. It becomes meaningful when it's coupled with authentic relationship and informed action. This beginning can be an opening to a greater public consciousness of Native sovereignty and cultural rights, a step toward equitable relationships and reconciliation. And I have some more resources I'm going to put in for you. There is a Google Drive of arts and culture from the U.S. Department of Arts and Culture, and there is some information on the USDAC as well. No worries, Paul. Okay, there are some resources. And if people see the attendance link change, the attendance number change, let's make sure that we have the resource guide and the attendance for people who come in after we've put it in the last time. We don't have our OSPI partners with us today, but I'll go ahead and call out recognition of their equity, statement, and values. So you can, I'll just kind of highlight a few words that stand out to me, and feel free, if you don't know how to annotate, you can do the same or put something into the chat box. Something I appreciate that is the recognition of the cultural knowledge and strengths of every family, student, and community, and to recognize that we need to examine current policies and practices that result in disparate outcomes for some of our students. They've called out students of color, those living in poverty, those receiving special education services and English learner services, those who identify as LGBTQ and highly mobile student populations. And of course, that we recognize and pay attention to our understanding of historical contexts, that we engage families, students, community representatives as partners, and that we work to actively dismantling systemic barriers, replacing them with policies and practices that ensure all students have access to the instruction and support they need to succeed in our schools. We also have from our OSPI and AESD partners a recognition of over 400 years of racism in the United States, and I'd like to call out and the trauma that our partners and fellow human beings are going through in the Middle East at the moment. We have a lot that's going on, and I think that we need to make sure that we always give ourselves and each other grace, and that we work hard to pay attention to the needs of all individuals and their human value. Again, please feel free to contribute and add in if there's something you'd like to. Nina, would you like to talk about our framework today? I think we talked about all the rest of the content, but not who was doing these parts. Or Effie, you always like to talk about MTSS.
I do. I can go ahead, Nina. So thinking about the work around our multi-tiered systems of support, and how we really look at students and look at, I was just responding to an email earlier today around assessment and which assessments, and really it starts opening that like whole idea of, okay, that might just be one assessment they might be using, but then there's other elements from other assessments, and how do we piece that all together to get the best information to help our students. And so thinking about the systems and structures that we have, we have support around the state for MTSS, and then thinking about in our piece there in the middle, our instruction and curriculum. And so working statewide, there's a variety of curriculums out there. There's a variety of instructional practices and philosophies that to be tapped into, but your regional implementation, your regional literacy coordinators, which I am one of, every ESD has one. If you don't know who yours is, let me know, and I can let you know who that is if you tell me what ESD you're connected to through your district. And then making that all so that all students benefit from everything we have with our system structures, instruction, and curriculum.
Thanks, Effie. I appreciate that. As Effie was talking, I was thinking about the Zoom situations and making sure that everyone who's joining us can share in and put your district for us. That's really helpful. And if you want to be in the Heights room, please put Heights, make sure it says that somewhere, because when we go into breakout rooms, there are people who want to be in that room. So I'll make sure that we add in a room for you. Or if you're on another team, you want to be in a room together, please let us know. You can put that into as your district. You can say, make sure that all of you have that same district if that's what you like as well. And I can add another room for that. The video on is a request. Notice it has an asterisk, because we understand if you don't feel comfortable, or if you have things going on in your life, or your connectivity is not good. It's just helpful when you go into breakout rooms that you can show you. I find the nonverbal feedback really helpful. So I'm appreciative of the people who do. Thank you for those of you who have your videos on. Again, if it's not a requirement, but it is helpful for us, particularly me. And when the muting when not talking is simply that if there's noise behind you, if there's not, feel free to stay unmuted. For me, if there's noise, hopefully everything will be quiet at home. But again, depending on where you are, I see some people in your classrooms and some people are at home. These are things just to make you have access to. Thank you, Robin. And then, of course, here, these are a little too where I forgot about those. To change your name, if you don't know how to do that, you would access your participants list, find your name. You'll notice next to it, more is a place to rename. There's the mute button. It should be on your toolbar. And there's also a way, if you prefer, to make the pictures bigger versus the shared screen bigger. You just kind of grab the gray line in between. Then there are the communication icons, is where you'll find the raised hand option. Oops, I don't have an arrow on the raised hand, but please feel free to raise hands or unmute at any time. And then there will be opportunities to annotate, in which case you can see where it says you're viewing my screen. When you click the little pencil, you should get a toolbar that looks like this, or perhaps there's a new one that's I haven't gotten a picture of yet, that it's vertical instead of horizontal. And that's a way that you can engage. You can change whatever color you're writing on the screen with that format button. Okay, and here's an opportunity for you to engage. We have some recommendations for how we engage with each other. And I invite you to add in something to the chat that we're missing, or start or highlight something that stands out to you that you think that's important for you today. No worries, Terry Ann, thank you. Although I think it's funny, we used to sit around a table and eat with each other. Why not eat on Zoom? So I've called out the grace. I think that's an important one for me. Always is to give ourselves and each other grace. That take a deep breath. We have a lot going on in our lives, and we will get through it, and we will learn from it, and we'll be better because of it. And to always see the positive in it. I think that's another one I should add on. Would anyone else like to add anything that we don't have?
I guess I just always want to add humor to everything, because especially this time of year. And I always want to know why, when I'm on a Zoom at home, my cat decides to attack my computer and everything else in sight. I'm like going like this in the background, you know. It's like, good grief, why do you do this? Never any other time, you know.
Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate that. Well, sometimes I'll get the dog coming and the animals fighting, and luckily I have more people at home, so we should be fine today. Thanks for that, Stephanie. Yeah, we give each other and ourselves grace. I think there's a lot going on. All right, I've got to pull up my annotations so I can clear all that off. Thank you for whoever contributed. So we'll clear that off. All right, and we do have a few ways of engaging. You'll see this little icon here. Let me get my disappearing vanishing pen. So this icon will indicate that there's an opportunity to engage. We will have breakout discussions. Obviously, you can add into the chat at any time. We also have a Jamboard, which I'll put into the chat box right now for you. If you prefer those, there is a, let me make sure I get this to everyone. There's a parking lot there if you'd like to add things into the parking lot. I'm not sure if we have prompts for this time. It's also, this Jamboard is also on the top of your resources that we added here. So you see here, here's the Zoom link, here's the Jamboard, the PD Enroller link if you want to share this with others. You already have the Jamboard up. So the Jamboard gives you an opportunity for you to share with us where you're from. We'll be doing some introductions in a moment, as well as have a parking lot. I need to update that to something a little more wintry. And then it has some opportunities for you to add in takeaways, and then there's some other resources that we've used in the past. So those are ways that we can be engaging with us. And as I mentioned, we have some introductions. I'm going to give you some instructions if you'd like while we're talking about, I should switch these, ourselves, and sharing with us who we are, sharing with you who we are, because we do have some new people in the room. But if you'd like to share on the Jamboard who you are, what your role, what your grade level, your content area, all that helps us as a group, not just the three of us, but all of us together understand each other and our perspectives that we bring to this. So I'm going to go back to this slide, and you'll notice that there are three of us here today who are as host or co-host, and there are more than that on this slide, where there are three who are not with us. They will be at some point throughout the series, and they have been fantastic resources for us to collaborate with throughout our time together. So I'm the one in the upper left-hand corner, and I think my daughter took that many years ago. And I am at ESU 113. I was originally trained to be a high school English teacher, and then instead I got trained to be an ESL teacher. And then instead I got hired at a school for kids with dyslexia, which was an elementary school. And they wanted me to teach math one day. I said, no. I ended up doing it, but I went on from that to teach middle school special education and high school special education. But English has always been my area of passion, particularly kids with dyslexia, especially because 10 years after I started at the School for Kids with Dyslexia, I had my own daughter who, and I learned in the meantime that dyslexia is very heritable and in my family. So I've now been on both sides of the IEP table, both sides of the 504 table, and so I bring to my work both a personal and a professional experience and expertise. And I think that that helps me feel like I'm a bit more rounded on that. So I'm going to pass it to Effie and then Nina, because Nina has another activity for you after our introductions.
Hi, I'm Effie Trial. I am in the lower middle photograph with my daughter. I'm looking awfully startled in that selfie, I realize, but my daughter is a senior in high school this year in Vancouver, Washington. And so we are in the throes of college applications and essays and reading and writing and all of these things. So I worked for Vancouver Public Schools for about 13 years before coming to the ESD and in 2014. And so I get to work on a lot of different projects, but I work very closely with the Title I and LAP directors in this region, and also with my statewide network. Like I said, all of the ESDs have a literacy, regional literacy coordinator, and we work as a network. And one of my areas of passion is working with supporting multilingual learners. So I work very closely with our multilingual directors. I grew up in a household. My father is Greek. He is 86 and lives in our house down in our apartment within our house. And my daughter has been in Spanish immersion since kindergarten. So I really value that multilingual experience and how to support students with that. Nina?
Sorry, I haven't spoken in like 20 minutes. So hi, everybody. Happy afternoon. I'm Nina Sotomayor Andrew. I've been working in education for over 20 years. I started out as a middle school intensive reading teacher, which basically I was there. We worked in block scheduling. We were reading in English at the same time. From there, I got my ELL endorsement as well as my reading certification. So went through the whole process of understanding the basics of reading and then thinking about how to apply that to my middle school and later high school students. I love small groups, and I love teacher directed instruction during that time, and I love database decision making. So those are all the things that I have worked hard to support teachers in. I've been an instructional coach at both the district and the state level for many years, and I currently collaborate with ESD 114 to bring their literacy supports as well. So I'm really excited to engage with you all today and to have other thought partners around this work. So thank you very much. And then I don't know, did we mention our friends who aren't here?
I forgot to. You can go ahead. Thank you.
That's
why I added their roles.
Thank you. So we have Rebecca Eastock. She supports from OSPI. She's in the bottom right-hand corner on my screen. Tere Hernandez is also a wonderful thought partner, and she works alongside with ESD 123. I believe she is one of the regional...
Actually, we're going to make a correction there. She's at 105.
Oops.
Oh, 105. Okay. I'm just reading what's on there.
That was my fault.
We all collaborate together, and then
123 is Lindsay. I get confused. Whoops, I'm about to put Lindsay.
We're all over the map. It's wonderful. And then we have Heidi Ayala, and she comes to us from OSPI, and she does secondary supports. So that's just a wonderful collaboration with her as well. So those are all of our friends that we get to work together with, and then hopefully get to produce some great opportunities for you guys.
Thank you, Nina.
You're welcome. So this is a fun activity I like to engage my students in, but as well, adults have fun with this too. So it's just a real quick check-in. How are we today? So you get to choose based, I think is this a cheetah?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
this is my daughter's favorite animal. This is definitely a cheetah.
I should know because that's my son. Both of my kids are Cherrydale cheetahs. So, although our cheetah doesn't look like this, the mascot, he has like cute little hearts. But this, I want you to think about which cheetah represents you today in this moment. And then you can type in the chat the number that you choose. And then I invite you to clear your throat and have an opportunity to speak out why you might have chosen that number. You can also use the annotation feature on the Zoom, which from the top of the screen, if you click view options, you have annotate. And I see someone has already annotated a little heart next to number 2, which has the baby cheetah.
That's me. I'm feeling mama cheetah today. We have some people saying definitely number 1. Oh, we have a 3.
Which one and number 1, right? 3. My students were awesome today. Yay!
I see a 6. Number 1 because the week is flying by. Another
6
1.
looks mysterious. 3, it's been a long week. It's Wednesday. It's almost over. Frustrating day. Yay, the science of reading. I have to say something after we're done with this. So you made me think of it right there.
Effie, I saw you hovering with, someone's trying to do a dot there. You can find the stamps.
Oh, one clamoring
7.
over, screaming in its ear. Right? The baby cheetah's yelling in number 1.
Robin's also said 7 like you, Effie, that
Yeah.
running.
Just go, go, go.
Mhm. Yeah, it's been one of those. We have another 8. We have someone, he looks dazed and like, you've got to be kidding. Did I get the right intonation on that, Stephanie?
Oh, I love these responses. And no one's picked 5. 5 is what I picked.
Oh, I thought to stamp it for you.
Thank you.
Want to share why?
I feel on top of the world today, maybe. I also like the backdrop, honestly, and the blue background is beautiful.
We have another busy here.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for engaging, everyone.
Thank you. So this, someone who mentioned getting ready to get into the science of reading. I have a 9-year-old and I'm homeschooling him this year, which has been wonderful. And yesterday I gave him the option of doing science or math. I like to give choices. And he goes, well, Mom, I'm just going to pick science because it's reading about science. And I thought that was a really cool way of him to already think about how we're all teaching reading, if you think about it, because our students have to be able to read what the text is. So whether I'm a math teacher or a social studies teacher or even a PE teacher, we need to be able to engage our students with reading strategies that would be fun during those classes. So from the voice of a 9-year-old.
Oops, I forgot to erase all those before translate. There we go. Thanks, Nina, for sharing. Would you like to continue? Oh, you're muted. I'll go ahead. So where we are, so speaking of the science of reading, we did have an introductory session in August, which we didn't include as part of the series because some people have started one, and you can start at any point in time. But we will also make sure we put recordings into the links, the resources. So if you missed 9.8.28 or 9.1, you can access them. But you also can access all of the resources we've shared on the resource guide that we gave you. So today we're looking at decoding and encoding. So last time we started with building that awareness of science of reading. Today we're focusing in on the word reading strand. Next time we'll focus on the language comprehension strand. We'll bring in reading and writing in February, talk about text sets and supportive instruction in March, and then focusing more on fluency in May, and then lastly, any other tools or strategies that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet. So it'll kind of be like the grab bag toolkit of what have we forgotten that we wanted to add in. So please feel free to provide support or such suggestions or feedback or things that you need at any point in time. So today we're going to be doing a review, reflect, and connect. So if you weren't here last time, hopefully you'll be in a heterogeneous group with someone who was here last time. But at the same time, I think it's Effie who's going to do a little bit of reviewing for us, which will get us all back on the same page of where we were talking about. And then we have some new learning and resources. I didn't adjust this one. Yeah, we think we've got everything. And then the new learning is going to be about the decoding and encoding, and the word reading piece. And then we'll be doing some practice that Nina will lead us through. I'll lead through the new learning and resources, and Nina will do some practice and closure. So I'm going to pass it to Effie for this. Effie, do you want to share screen? Do you want me to just keep
No,
going?
you go ahead.
Okay. All right. I'll bring the whole thing up for you if you want.
Okay,
Oops,
so many of us have seen this, and this is a simple view of reading, and just really isolating always that we remember that there is a multiplication sign in the middle of this equation, and that anytime we multiply anything times 0, we get 0. So and that we're not, because oftentimes we'll see things where we're adding parts of speech together, or we're adding things together, but this is a multiplication sentence. So the language comprehension, so you'll see the abbreviation of LC, the ability to understand spoken language. So really all of our oral, verbal communication. And as I had said earlier in my introduction, a big piece of my work is supporting the work done with multilingual learners. And when we talk about structured literacy, and we talk about those of you that are familiar with Scarborough's rope, we think about the language comprehension and the oral processing and the language processing and the vocabulary building that we have, and really how important that is when it works in conjunction with what we need to do to know about lifting print from pages and our decoding and our word reading. So looking over at word reading and decoding, ability to transform print into spoken language, so that we are, but this is while we're lifting it, and decoding, and that all of it is based on our whole entire goal for reading is always reading comprehension, that we understand what we're reading, no matter what the text is, if it's narrative, if it's informational, if it is some sort of something we have to know how to do. And like, so we are always looking for those, that kind of goal. And if we don't have both in place, we're going to struggle. I have, as many of us have we've worked years ago I worked with kids who, in this, in particular, my multilingual learners, now when I look back years and years ago, could become really strong, what we called word callers. They were decoding and lifting off the page, but their language and understanding was still emerging. And so really the comprehension was very, very low, but they were reading things quite well. So then we see the reverse quite often too, where we have kids that have really strong language abilities, but they can't decode. And this is often our kids who are now we're identifying and seeing with tendencies of dyslexia or struggles and gaps of that nature. So we need it all put together. And so that's the complex version of the simple view.
Thank you, Effie.
So thinking about this, when I initially started years ago as a reading for a teacher and then a reading first coach, it was always the big ideas of reading, the 5 big ideas. It was always what it was. And we think about phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension outlined in the National Reading Panel from 2000. One thing I want to note that I always just try to make clarification on is it is listed as phonemic awareness in the National Literacy Panel findings. However, phonemic awareness is part of phonological awareness, and that is an important aspect to be aware of, because phonological awareness is more than phonemic awareness, but that is an explicit literacy skill that is needed for successful reading. So that is a whole class in and of itself, but just kind of when you hear those words and that people might use them interchangeably, just know the phonemic awareness is part of phonological awareness. And then down below is our sixth component, which ties exactly back to the simple view of reading on the slide we just saw about our oral language skills. And so when you start seeing some of these visuals, like I said about Scarborough's rope, simple view of reading, the components of explicit literacy now, you'll start to see the layers on what's common. Okay, so what pieces fit together to make sense? Where would I put that? Comprehension, obviously comprehension, you know, so vocabulary, and you want to start piecing it all together so that you're getting that whole picture when working with students. Okay. And there it is. See, pulling it all together. And that's why I wanted you to think about it, because I knew this slide was coming when we start thinking about where is the reading comprehension. We said reading comprehension is reading comprehension, but fluency, there's an arrow from language comprehension, because it's not just with the reading piece, it's with the language and our speaking fluently and understanding the fluency of language, and then decoding in the middle. We've got that phonemic awareness piece, working with that, which we also do, you know, orally, but it is orally, but it ties directly to that element of learning to read. Like I said, it's part of the phonological umbrella. And then oral language and vocabulary. Yeah, building. Yep. Vocabulary building. Yeah. I was just kind of thinking where other arrows could go there.
I was gonna say, and I thought I had enough arrows on here.
I'm in my head, I'm adding some arrows. So anyway, as you can all see, it really is just the importance of understanding all of it being the whole picture of reading.
Oh yes, I mean, like this is, yes, it's very complex.
It's complex.
When we first made this, I kept saying, I'm sorry, we need more and more arrows. So it's just because once it's not a linear progression. This is one of the things I think too often people mistake, and they think we just go from one to the other to the other to the other. And no, vocabulary needs to be built up all along the way while you're working on your word reading skills.
Right.
It's if you can sound things out, it doesn't matter if you don't know it, then they're not going to know whether or not they've sounded out the correct word.
Right.
So I think that's just a recognition of that. Thanks, Effie. And last but not, almost not.
Okay, so bear with me. There's a lot going on with these two side by side, and we're aware of that. So let's just isolate for a moment the blue one and look at that. And where at the top, your word recognition. So again, connecting to Scarborough's rope, your print, and then thinking about your foundational standards. So your novice reader at the top there, you're going to have your print concepts for your K moving into 1. You know, print goes left to right on the page, and just the basic elements of our print concepts. And then phonological awareness, and there it says includes phonemic awareness, PK up through to early 2nd grade. And then it's in refinement. See the little the woven ongoing, and there's a key down at the bottom, that you're fine-tuning that piece. And this is in a perfect world, so this is what we are hoping for. Then basic decoding and advanced decoding, so it runs all the way out through 12th grade, because we're moving into multisyllabic words with morphology, with affixes, and so it gets much more complex, and content specific words that are multisyllabic words that can be really challenging in science or math, and even social studies or history. So then thinking about how all that kind of pieces together in sounding out complex words. Then fluency, accuracy rate, expression, if you're familiar with the word prosody. If not, please let us know, and but we can get more information out about that. But that's just when you're reading with that cadence of reading for expression, reading with reading the punctuation. So yeah, so okay, so there's the the prosody, and we could find something that we can add in as a resource, Alicia, about prosody. And it really is that so that we're not word callers when we're reading, and that we're reading it as the pacing as you would as a speaker, with reading with fluency and good expression, and is prosodic reading.
Nina, maybe you can find some things since I'm sharing screen. But I would add really that what I wish that more presentations and learnings about fluency would focus on is that for prosody, you have to know grammar. Syntax is crucial for prosody, because that's when you're moving away from, as you said, the word calling, you're moving away from reading word by word to reading phrase by phrase, and recognizing that the phrase under the table tells me where something is, and around the bush tells me where I was beating. It helps me understand language as well as the content too, and it helps me pause appropriately and stress appropriately. And so grammar and mechanics really contributes to prosody.
So I looked up just the very basic meaning, the patterns of stress and intonation in language. And Alicia, when she was just talking, hit like 3 of those words describing it. So that intonation and in the linguistics and element of speech, that we're not just reading. I used to say that my daughter would read these the American Girl books, and they to me were really boring characters. And so, but she had been in theater at a very young age, so she had been taught expression, and she could read those books with expression and make them interesting. So sometimes myself, when I'm reading something that I find that isn't very engaging, I try to trick my brain into making it engaging just by changing up the kind of the prosody of it.
So Effie, there's one thing I want to add. So Mary has added in the prosody, accuracy, and rate, which is what we have here. Although they use the word expression instead of prosody. I do want to address one little misconception or concern about the word rate, because while yes, that is the definition of fluency, with just using the word rate, I think we run the risk of encouraging our kids to read too quickly, in which can also diminish their understanding of what they're reading. So there is a sweet spot. I think it was
my bike.
It was what's the kind of come on, Jen Hasbrook, when she talks about fluency, she says that there's you really 100 words per minute is kind of your sweet spot. You don't want to get too fast because you lose comprehension. And one of the things that I actually prefer is to take the word rate and call it accuracy. No, not accuracy, I misspoke. Automaticity, there's the one. Yeah. Because automaticity is our goal, that we can say it without having to think about it and decode it, which is going to be what we're focusing on. So that
was remember my bike example in one of the sessions, that if you ride the bike too slow, you're going to fall off. If you ride the bike too fast, you're going to fall off. So it's that finding that perfect spot with reading is the same way, that you're going to not understand what's read because you're reading too slow and you're not retaining the comprehension and the vocabulary. But if you read too fast, which is a lot of times as an adult my problem, because I'm trying to get through so much material and then have to go back and reread it, is you read too fast and then you don't comprehend it either. So,
and just to add to that, I think that's why there's such power in read alouds a lot of time in the classroom, as often as we can get a chance, because it's an opportunity for our students to hear that fluent reading coming out. And if you don't feel you yourself are a fluent reader, that's why sometimes audio can be also helpful. But I always think back to when I was a child, and that's why a lot of times we do want our kids to be read to at a young age, because that's where they're picking up a lot of that as well. So you'll notice maybe the students who aren't hitting that sweet spot may sometimes be the kiddos that haven't engaged in that type of atmosphere, which is fine. Like, I didn't read to all of my kids either, but that's where those opportunities come from. So if we can give those during class time to do quick read alouds and things like that, they will pick up on that as well too.
All right, you ready for me to move on to the next one, Neffy?
Yeah, so then thinking about that language comprehension as we were looking at the simple view of reading earlier, and that it's ongoing forever and forward. We are beginning and learning and continuing to learn and acquire new language constantly. So thinking about that, as well as then the second section on background knowledge and building our understanding every time. I just got a new dishwasher today, and they handed me the paperwork on how to set up my phone to turn on and off the new dishwasher. And so right there, I'm like, okay, what do I know about dishwashers? What do I know about my phone? And how does this background knowledge on both of these? And what do I know about Bluetooth and connecting things? So right there is a whole new world for me on like navigating pieces of on understanding how to try to hook up this dishwasher to my phone. Listening, reading comprehension, including what we were talking about, like the syntax and sentence comprehension. I'm doing a book study right now on the writing rope. If one of you wants to write that in the chat. It is talking. There's a section in there that I was just reading on syntax and sentence structure and how we help students build their sentence structure. I know that's a writing book, but it really, for me, relates to understanding the complexity of reading complex sentences as we're moving forward. I am going to hold off, since that took quite a bit of time, on the writing piece, if that's okay, and we're going to focus on and not go through all of those. Just let you know that you'll have the slide deck accessible to you, and you go back and you can look at this writing piece in the green and how it kind of relates and aligns to the reading.
Please keep in mind, though, that the slide deck has not been made ADA accessible.
Oh,
but we have resources for you.
Yeah.
Okay. One last thing before we go into your breakout rooms.
All right. So these are the modules that Alicia and other folks, colleagues across the state, and I are working on in putting together when we kind of built this idea around how do we produce modules around supporting structured literacy beyond. This is just the secondary courses parts of it will be within this. And so when we think about what is needed to build this, if you look around the outside lenses, that all of it needs to be direct and explicit, systematic, sequential, and cumulative. So it's building on prior skills. We know that good instruction for students identified as dyslexic and supports other students who are not identified as dyslexic, even our multisensory and multimodal instruction, and that it's diagnostic and responsive, which relates directly to MTSS in the assessment response. It relates exactly to PLC work. So it all starts to tie together, and it's not one additional thing, it's all of it working together. So, and you look at the different areas here, starting at the bottom with oral language, knowledge, proficiency, vocabulary. We were just talking about that in our other slides. The phonology, so phonological awareness and phonemic awareness, again within phonological awareness. Phonics and the orthographic knowledge, and what is printed and how we're making sense of that print. Reading and writing fluency, we've just talked about reading fluency quite a bit. So that prosody, that rate, and how that all pieces together and makes sense so that it is reasonable and successful for students. And then semantics, the whole understanding and comprehending our language and our system of language. So there's a lot there. It's a lot.
Teaching reading is a lot. We're going to give you some time to talk about it. So we want to give you some time to process what we've talked about. I'm going to look to my colleagues to say, I have small rooms, so maybe 8 minutes, 10. What do you think, Effie?
Yeah, 10's fine.
All right, so I'm going to pause
Thank you.
recording for our whole group so we can hear some from some of the breakout rooms.
Yep.
Looks like Heights had a conversation even this morning about vocabulary, which I think we'll be talking more about next month. Or wait, we're skipping next month, January when we meet again. But let's see if there's anybody who wants to share some of your processing you did on the reviewing that Effie did with us. Tracy, that's new for me. I'm not used to seeing that the little circle with your face. Would you like to share, Tracy Fox?
They put it in the
Well, unfortunately, I'm not sure that came clearly. Maybe somebody else from your room would like to share.
we talked a lot about fluency and how important that is and that sweet spot. So like we do fluency, I have some kids who just want to read as fast as they can. And talked about, no, slow down. Do you even have a clue of reading? And then we also talked about reading for different classes and, you know, reading fiction versus reading something like for the history class or science class, and telling kids to look at words you don't know what they mean, because you could read a paragraph and not have a clue what they're talking about if you don't know 1 or 2 vocabulary words.
Right. Thank you, Tracy, for pointing that out. There's a great exercise that one of my colleagues does as a simulation of what it's like if you don't understand 95% of, like, if you don't understand just 5% of the words. And when people say, well, 95%, it's good enough. Well, for me, it depends on which 5% those are. If they're really crucial for understanding the passage, then, I mean, if it all depends. I feel like it depends. Thank you, Stephanie, for adding that. Is there someone else who would like to share from your breakout room discussion?
I can share for our room.
Thanks,
The
Kelly.
few of us talked a little bit about just kind of where they've been going in the classroom, accessing some different assessments, you know, like how can you trust data to really group kids and what's working and what doesn't. And then we talked a little bit about just how hard it is with secondary kids once they've failed for so long. Are they really trying on the assessments, and are you getting accurate results? And the behaviors just become tough because of that vicious cycle of failure. It makes it difficult for everyone, kids and teachers.
Mm-hmm. And Kelly Jo, one of the things that maybe they've memorized a lot of words, which is why I'd like to, when I was teaching high school, I would get out Edgar Allan Poe or Shakespeare to assess my kids. Something I knew that there would be words they've never seen before, so I could see how are they going to tackle a word they've never seen? How are they going to sound it out? Which is going to be what we're going to be talking about in a moment. Is there research on whether there are words we should emphasize with students who need a literacy boost? So, Paul, that's a really good question when you say common words, short words, verbs, nouns, content critical words. So it depends on if their struggle is in understanding or if it's in translating those squiggles and the letters to what the words are. So there's a yes and. I mean, so research does say you get your biggest bang for your buck when it comes to teaching meaning and understanding if you're using what's called tier 2 words. Those are more Latin based. So if you think, Effie's laughing at, yes, those tier words have been around for a long time. Tier 1 words are your everyday basic common words, as you say, that most kids know the meaning of, but they're really hard to read and spell. Those are Old English, Anglo-Saxon words. The tier 2 words that Effie was just typing in, those are your Latin-based words like divide. And it is a word that's used in many different contexts. You can divide cells, you can divide cake, you can divide, you have division in math, division in government. I mean, those are words that are applicable around many different content areas. And then the tier 3 words are those ones that are just specific to the content you're talking about, like maybe isotope or peninsula even. Sorry, Kelly Jo. But it's something you need to know if you're talking about a particular geographical area, but not all. So that's when we're talking about understanding with sounding outwards and being able to access. I mean, there are some strategies, understanding morphemes and syllables that we're going to be talking about shortly that definitely can approach that. So, Paul, I think it depends on what your need is, if it's the word reading strand or the language comprehension. Go ahead, Effie.
So yeah, I just put in the link, The Bringing Words to Life by Dr. Isabel Beck on word instruction, and thinking about those tier 2 words like Alicia was just talking about, and also Paul, I know you are trained in PsyOp, so thinking about cognates is really a powerful way to teach when you're thinking about your multilingual learners.
Yes, I appreciate that. Well, actually, that's a great segueing into our new learning and resources, particularly because right now we're focusing on the decoding and the encoding. And so we're talking about phonemic awareness, phonics, and morphology. But one of the places I want to start with are recognizing that decoding and encoding are 2 sides of the same coin. Decoding is the process of translating those squiggles and lines, what we call letters, into what the words are. And so it's a receptive written language. So I'm not actually converting. I'm not producing this. I'm learning it and being able to. What I produce is oral, but it is not producing and creating, writing down my own thoughts. So you can see they're both conversion, but in the decoding, I look at the letters and I convert them to their spoken form and figure out what they mean. And when I'm encoding, I have my idea of what word I want to write, and then I have to convert those sounds into their printed form. What you see along the bottom are strategies and things we can do to help and support our students. So when I say flashcards, I don't mean whole words. I really, really need to stress that. I'm talking about letter patterns. So for example, I might do a flashcard of the TION because I want my kids to recognize that TION says shun. And the SION could say shun or could be jeune, like in vision. So I want them to recognize these letter patterns. Or the TCH makes ch at the end of a word right after a short vowel. That IGH represents the long I, unless it's preceded by an E, in which case it's going to leave a long A, like in slay and way. So those are, and I want them to practice decoding to divide words into syllables. And of course, I want them to be practicing reading texts. On the encoding, I want them to be writing, doing lots and lots of writing. I talk about building our reading skills through writing, teaching reading through writing. If my students are struggling to read something, I'm going to get out some paper and say, okay, let's write it. Let's pay attention to the sound symbol correspondences. And then that helps solidify in our brain is through the writing process. So we're talking about receptive versus productive. We're talking about, of course, you all know decoding is the reading and encoding is the writing piece. But as we get to how do we remember those words, this is a little bit about the fluency that we were talking about earlier, is that I think this has become a no-brainer for most of us, as we know that just seeing and hearing words simultaneously is not going to lead to me being able to recognize them automatically. I mean, we were talking earlier about reading to our kids. For some of our kids who have a very strong ability to create, to recognize statistical regularity in our language, they can figure this out. But there is a process that goes on in their brain that is more than just seeing and hearing. So what's going on in their brain, for a long time, we thought it's just decoding. And again, for some of our kids, decoding is going to get there, because what's really happening in their brains is this orthographic mapping piece. So that is the piece that leads to our automatic word recognition. There are kids who can decode a word, and then when they see it again, they're going to have to decode it again. And if they see it again, they're going to have to decode it again. I'm seeing some nods. It is the orthographic mapping piece that we need to get to, so that we are making a connection in our brains between that pattern that I mentioned, like EIGH, and its sound in like in A, in slay and way and neighbor. And that is a connection that we get through a lot of practice of decoding and encoding. The writing piece helps make that solid for you. So I'm just going to take a pause to see if orthographic mapping is a new concept for those of us with us today. So let me go back, and I have a poll here. So I'm going to launch that. What is your familiarity with the term orthographic mapping? Never heard of it, but I'm not sure what it means. Got a vague idea. Hopefully what I just did helped a little bit. And I'm comfortable with the term, but I can always learn more. I'd be curious, we have Jill, whether or not you can access the poll on their phone. Or do we still have Jill? Oops, looks like, oh, there you go. Hi, Jill. This is Jill Heights. If you can't access the poll, you can put something into chat. Or unmute if you don't have access for any of those. I'll give you just a moment left. All right, we got up to 78%. I'll share results so you can see that if this is something relatively new to you, you're not alone. You'll see that we had a majority have a vague idea. Some of them I've heard of the term. Looks like equally between they've heard of the term, they're comfortable with the term, and we have a couple who've never heard of it. So let me do a quick demonstration. And again, like I said, it's this interactive going back and forth between the sound and the symbol that creates this memory for that sound symbol connection. And what really creates a hook is meaning. So meaning is especially crucial when I'm writing. It's helpful when I'm reading as well. But, and of course, it's our end goal, isn't it? It's this process. It's a behind the scenes cognitive task in which students store words in their long-term memory. So I'm going to do a quick demonstration. Above the line is the reading piece, and below the line is the orthographic mapping that is implicit for some of our kids who have very strong ability to make these statistical connections and notice the regularity of our language. For our kids who don't have that, our kids who end up in getting intensive interventions in secondary or in special education, we might need to do some support for them. And especially, what's our best support? Writing. Okay, so across the top, my kid sees these 3 words, and then they need to sound it out and figure out that the sounds that those letters represent in the first case are sit. And the second case, let me get my annotations. My I consonant E. Let me see. Do I have a disappearing one here? That's okay. I won't. My I consonant E represents I. So this becomes sight. And here I have an IGH that also is sight. So that's the decoding part that my students did. Then again, implicitly for our kids who are strong readers, our weaker readers might need some support. Go back and think about what were the sounds in that word. Okay, the first one was sit. The sounds were it. Now, what letters represented each sound? In this case, the s is represented by an S, the I by an I, and the t by the T. Now, with the second type of word, maybe get this, notice it is going to be the same process if my word is very clear, sound symbol correspondence, or if there's a bit more ambiguity. And this is what I would call a yellow flag word, because I have to slow down and think when I'm spelling this, because there's more than one way of representing the I sound. I've only shown you 2, you know there are more. So in this case, again, I think about this I, t, and if like before this and the t are represented by the S and the T, that one's easy. In the first case, the I is by an I consonant E, and the second case, the I is by an IGH. So this is the process that we go back and forth with in our brains, and it is crucial for remembering how are the words that we read. Okay, here's a quick, whoops, let me take this off. Quick summary of it that I got online. That it's again citing the clear all drawings. It is not just that decoding piece. The decoding is what we did along the top. It's using those letter sound relations to activate oral words from an unfamiliar oral string, letter string. Whereas the orthographic mapping uses the sound to letter. So first we go letter to sound. Now we're going from sound to letter to anchor or map those phonemes in a word's pronunciation to the printed letter strings for long-term memory and future retrieval. So again, how do we do this? We get our kids doing a lot of writing. And how do we put this into the framework of what my kids need in secondary? This is a resource that is in your resource guide, but I had to take a picture of this because I think this was so useful for us to recognize the steps that we go through. And this actually came from a secondary guide. As we think about all the elements that our kids need. So Kelly Jo, I heard you talk about what are some of the gaps that some of our kids might have, especially some secondary. Effie, you mentioned earlier that we hope our kids have gone through all of these by the time they get to high school. Now notice that language comprehension has the infinity symbol on the end, because I'm always going to be learning more words. I'm always going to be learning more, gaining more background knowledge. There's always going to be more for me to learn about language, especially those of us who study it and always look things up. But hopefully we have a strong base of the phonological awareness. Remember, Effie had mentioned that phonemic awareness as a part of phonological awareness, on which we build my understanding of the connection of phonemes to letters. That's what we call the alphabetic principle. And then look at all the different additional complexities of phonics. We start with those basic CVC words. We move on to blends and digraphs. And I remember, actually, I didn't have it in my notes here. There was an error here that we found last time. I'm going to see if I can remember what it was. Or maybe somebody else will find it. There
on the bottom, yeah.
It's under multisyllabic words. Fantastic does not have any open syllables. Fan, tas, and tick, those are all closed syllables. Pilot, the first syllable is an open one. So if you were taking note of this, make note of those changes right there. But you'll see, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different ways that we pronounce things based on the letter combinations that we call syllables. You can help your students if they're struggling with syllables, call it a beat. Every syllable, every word has at least one beat. Every word has at least one syllable. But you can see it gets much more complex if we look at the language of origin to help us understand words. Looking at that like manuscript or manicure, or it's actually, I'm trying to think of another word, or like circulate or circulation. You look at those French words with the QUE and elate, and those Anglo-Saxon. I think we were talking about Paul earlier. Acre is a really tough one, but if you think of mother, daughter, those are very common Anglo-Saxon words. Greek and Latin get much more commonly used as we get older in our literature and what we're reading. So I'm just going to pause here for a moment, give you a moment to look. And are there any questions or thoughts that you would add on to this really brief overview of a lot of complex stuff that our kids need to know? All good? All right. One way that I like to summarize it is when we're talking about letter sound knowledge, and just that we need to think about directionality, understanding that print relates to speech. That's our print knowledge. That the alphabetic knowledge is that letter sound relationship that we were talking about. That's the relationships between those letter forms, the letter names. And then the alphabetic principle is then we look at syllables and morphemes and those really rare patterns and the letter combinations, just building to the more complex knowledge as we get older, going up to, we hope that our students, by the time they reach secondary, have these skills, but I think you're here because not all your kids do. And so we want to make sure that they have that foundation to build upon, that they understand the sounds of our language and they understand how those are represented in print and how they can be manipulated and changed. And when you change just one sound, you have a whole new word. And for some kids, that can be eye-opening. I mean, I'm not being facetious at all with this. Recognizing that clash and crash mean two very different things. And yet it's only one little small phoneme, the O versus a R, that make the difference in those two words. So my colleagues or anybody, feel free to add in anytime. But the one most important thing I think we need to represent and help our kids learn is that there is an imperfect relationship between speech and print that is predictable. That what you see in print is a representation of speech to the best of our ability. I mean, we don't write or we kind of do. In text in novels, you might see UH. How's that written? At the same time, how do you tell the difference between and You know, so there are things that are hard to write. You can't, it's hard to write the difference between high and high and high. So intonation is something that we do the best we can with our punctuation, with our words, but there's so much more that we add in our speech. And as our kids get older, what they have to read becomes much more complex because it's not just the words, but it's also the grammatical patterns and forms and connections that we see that they just don't get in common everyday speech. So it becomes a lot more important as the kids get older to understand grammar. Because when you see what a printed word, you are seeing so much more than just the sounds. In some languages, anybody speak Spanish, Italian, a language that is more sound symbol connection clear? Effie, how's Greek with that? I can't remember. Pretty regular sound symbol correspondence? Transparent?
Alpha, beta, gamma, delta. I mean, it's pretty like it is what it, yeah, they're pretty.
When you see a letter, you know it's
from
only
what I
representing
know,
something.
you see a letter, you know what sound it's going to be. It's pretty, yeah. And that's one of the reasons I know, like my aunts had, because we think about languages and and that's when I realized the placement of our tongues. And even though they had a theta, where theta is placed in their words is different than what saying the word thank you in English was challenging. But yeah, I think it's pretty sound specific.
So unlike Spanish, Greek, Italian, etc., English is what we call morphophonemic. So what we see is not just the sounds. Let me get my vanishing pen here. There's more than just sounds. There's the morphemes. So you see the phoneme here in the middle. These are again these Greek parts. Phone meaning sound. Morpho having to do with the form. And then, of course, ik being the adjectival form. So we are seeing the sounds, but we're also seeing a lot of history. We're seeing, for example, when your kids make a mistake with the W in the word to, help them recognize the connections to 12 and 20 and between, and recognize that there is a historical connection there. Or the silent G in sign, that one is connected in meaning. So this is connecting to related words. We have some meaningful parts. So sign, that silent G, think of signal or signature. You sign your signature. These words are related in meaning. Even if they're not related in pronunciation, meaning is going to override. Meaning is going to be the most important thing that we see in printed words. And so this is an acrostic I came up with to help us remember these are the elements that we see when we see words. It's not just the sounds. And so our kids who get frustrated with trying to sound things out, it's like, well, that's your basic phonics, which will only get you so far. You need to go think about those advanced pieces, understanding these spelling patterns, understanding some history and some etymology, and understanding morphology in order to break down and really understand all those words. Anything else from my colleagues or anybody else with us?
No, I was just thinking earlier, though, when you were talking about the previous slide and about, I spend way too much time thinking about, yeah, yay, Y-E-A-H, Y-E-A.
That was a bit silly.
Why? And so those variations of yes that are very informal on texting, because I'm like, oh, is a yeah an excited version of yeah? And then I think maybe I should just stick with yes.
Again, it's a complex. And this is, so how do we help our kids get there? We want to pay attention to the syllables and morphemes. So I don't think I animated this. I think we discussed, should I do this live or animated? So when I'm paying attention to the syllables and morphemes, the first thing, if my kids need me to go to the level of, make it red here for decoding, of the individual sounds and symbols, I'm going to underline my vowels to help me divide between my syllables. So you can see, where's my, there we go. So you can see sunset, wombat, those are both closed syllables we mentioned before. Here we have hero and tutu as being two sets of open syllables. And again, how do I divide these? It's simply a tool to help my kids sound out words they've never seen before. Let me get to the drawing, not a shape. Oh, how do I do this? Oh, there we go. I wouldn't want that. So for example, with the word name, I help them recognize, remember, like we had the word sight, that the A consonant E, that E is affecting the A. This is what's called a split digraph. It's two letters that make one sound. In this case, it's divided by a consonant. I have again here a vowel consonant E in lime and another one here in stone. Here I have a vowel R where the R is influencing the vowel sound. So I have bore and der, that sound and the or sound, and the R sound and the or sound, helping our kids recognize that we have two beats, two syllables, harbor, border. We have the AI working together to make A here in snail. Although ale, you have that L influence is very challenging. And the OW is a team, like an O and ow and like cow or snow. And we have another OU team here. And the OW and OU are interchangeable. It's just we're going to use the W at the end of syllables and words, and the OU is going to be in the middle. We have the PLE and ample. Notice how I have after one consonant after, it's going to make it a short A, versus here, oh, I have a GLE, goal, and I have a long U, but no consonant, so it's going to be that long U and bugle. When I'm working with the multisyllabic words, I'm going to help my kids recognize that I have a suffix Y here, and I had to double that N. My base word is sun, not with one N, not two. And I want to teach them the rules on Y. It's a one-syllable word ending in one consonant after one short vowel, and I'm adding a suffix that begins with a vowel. Versus gladly, again, I have a one word, but I'm adding a suffix that begins with a consonant, so I'm not doubling my D. Gladden, I would double. Gladly, I don't. This one is, I'm noticing I have a suffix ly. My base word was rare. But notice what I did here. I had my base word was save, and I dropped the E. These are a lot of things that we don't really think about because we don't know how to spell these words. But if we think about the patterns, it helps us, number one, recognize what is my base word, what's my origin. It helps me understand meaning, but then also I can understand the spelling and apply those patterns to other words I haven't seen before. So on this one, I see here again, see a suffix FUL, and I have an OY, which keeps that team together. But here, my base word was deny. When I have a suffix ED, my base word, I can't end a word in an I, so I'm going to have to put the Y back there and recognize that deny, whoops, sorry, deny would be still dividing here. Deny was my base word. I changed the Y to I to add the ED. You want to be really careful. I had high schoolers who had learned these rules very complexly, and they'd forget pieces. The more slowly, carefully, and clear and concise we do with our kids, the less of an opportunity for them to remember things and have some confusion. So we either double, we drop, or we change. And you'll notice on the last one, I did not make a change because my suffix begins with an I, and this word, my base word, my carry is my base word, carry. I did not change my Y to I in this case because I would have two I's next to each other, and we just don't do that in English. So I have a whole bunch of great resources I'm going to put into the chat box. One is syllable sliders, which helps our kids find where to divide words into syllables. There's some morphology flashcards and more science morphemes. Those are lots of fun. A routine for syllable division. And syllable words are from really great reading. Again, ways to help kids divide things into syllables so they can access what the word is and sound it out. Okay, we've done a lot here. I'm going to clear all that off. And we're going to give you some time to practice. I'm going to turn it over to Nina.
Hi, everybody. So thanks for engaging in all of that. Thanks, Alicia, for taking us through that. One of the things I love about that activity is when doing it with middle school, high school students, I always like to chunk it. So like if I have a small group of kiddos, maybe we do like a few of these every time we meet. So it's not, it just becomes something that we engage in and becomes part of our routine. And then they get that work in too. So you just had me thinking of like how I would be applying this to my classroom today. So that leads us into our practice for application. We're going to have some time to engage in some resources. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put you guys back into breakout rooms. When you're in your room, you're going to have an opportunity on the next slide. There's going to be a list of different activities. You can choose an activity. You're going to read through that activity. You're going to discuss it with your group. You're going to think about how might you use this with your students. And then maybe some questions you have about the activity. Maybe as you're going through it, you have some, I don't get this, or how would I do this part? Then we'll come back together and we'll share out with the whole group. So while you're in there, choose somebody from your group who feels comfortable with explaining the activity you guys chose and like giving a brief summarizing of your thoughts. So if we go on to the next slide.
Oh, you know what? I'm going to recreate the rooms. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
So that people can choose which room they want to be in, because you'll see we have different activities in different rooms.
Perfect. Thank you.
Or in your room, you could just choose whichever one you want to do.
Choice is nice. So based on the room or your room's choice, we have 5 different activities listed. We'll include the resource link for that as well. So I can, let me attach that into the chat. And then there's also individual choice. If you want to research other resources on decoding and encoding, or you have something that you use all the time and you want to share out, that's really helpful too. So any questions before we go into the breakout rooms? And feel free, you can dabble in other things too once you get in there and you guys have picked, but you know, focus on that one activity, and then if you have time, you can go through the other ones.
So we'll give everyone a moment. Which room applies to filling the gaps? Oh, you know what? That's a really good question. These are activities that came from a session at a conference, and these are, so the first 2, I think, if I remember correctly, are phonemic awareness. The room 3 is more sound symbol correspondences. So most of these are about the phonemes. The nonsense word test is a way to practice and make sure that you can support your students in multisyllabic words and sound symbol correspondences. And actually what we can do is I can make another room that's simply just having a conversation about syllables and morphemes and delving into those a bit more and some of those other resources we've had. So I will add in one more room. And I did create one for heights if people choose to do that. And I'll just talk, room 7 will be syllables and morphemes, just processing.
Thank you, Alicia. Any other questions before we go into breakouts? How much time? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I want to make sure that everyone gets into, gets the resources you need out of the chat box before going into breakout rooms, because once you go in there, you can't. I am renaming rooms. Nina, can you see what that question is?
Would the nonsense word test be used as an initial benchmark assessment?
I would. I would love to hear what Effie and Nina think about that.
Would the nonsense word test be used in additional?
As an initial
Mark.
benchmark assessment.
My only use of the nonsense word test has been through Dibbles as part of a screener. And so if you're using it as a universal screener, so it depends on how you're using the word benchmark, and you're going to do it 3 times a year, but it was with up to a certain grade, and then it starts dropping off on the value of it. But really it's just testing that they're not memorizing the words that we have that are like cat and the CVC words, that they can actually look at nonsense words and decode them. So yeah, I would just be use it as kind of a screening tool, but not anything beyond that.
Okay, sounds good. So it's a choose your own adventure. I'm going to pause the Encoding room, and I don't know if Heights you all were mixed in. Looks like you were mixed in. So the Encoding room was, what page was that one? Let's see. There's blending, segmentation. Is there somebody who would like to talk about the Encoding as I try and find it? Here we go. Encoding boxes. There's so much you can do with these. I'll pass the baton to that team, and I'll show something else as we go, and other uses for secondary. So if there's someone who will start talking, I'm going to grab another resource. No one's talking. Did I ever resume recording? I did.
I just did. It had been missed. I just did it.
So what I wanted to share is this is a book of resources from Spell Links, and it's word study resources where they focus on all of the aspects, meaning sounding it out, looking at the beat, looking at homonyms. And one of the things that they do with these Encoding boxes, I think that, so typically when we think about Encoding boxes, and I'm curious to hear what that group listened to or talked about, it just has the Encoding boxes. So one of the things that she uses in here, and this is, I can put the resource in this is Jan Wasowitz, is to use these for multisyllabic words. You can either use it for individual sounds or you can use it for individual syllables. So if I think about the word accept, and I think about how many syllables are there, accept, I have to do it that way. If I have a kid who's struggling with, let's think about the word slip. So I could look at it either as multiple syllables or as in individual sounds, whatever my kids need to work on. I could use these boxes to make sure that I have everything represented. If my word is slippery, slippery, that's a 3-syllable. Here we go, slippery. I want to make sure that I am able to represent those and pay attention to that sound symbol correspondences for encoding. But then, of course, as I go back and reread what I've written for the spelling and for the decoding, to build those skills as well. Does anybody from that group want to add on anything about the Encodings, or anybody else in the group?
I'm going to add that one of the things I used to like to use with Encoding boxes is having them on like when I used it, it was on the overhead projector. So don't date me, but we weren't as technologically advanced yet. But what is it called? The projector screens that teachers use with the students, and you can write on it. I can never remember what they're called in the moment. But we would take math counters. Like I'd go to the math teacher and borrow the little clear counters, and I would place it on top. And so as we go through the Encoding box and we were sounding out each part of the word, we would pull the counter down as well. So the kids could even take a piece of paper, whatever, and just the action of using their fingers and the right side of their body. I would encourage them to use the right hand as much as possible. That would help activate some of the learning during that time too. It makes it more tactile and engaging as well. And it's colorful. So that's a fun way to get it done. And you can do it in small groups as well. So if you have a small group of students and you want to go through this activity, you can take out the counters and the paper, and they think it's like a little fun thing to do, and they're learning. So, and you can use any word parts that you want to. So sometimes I would encourage students to give me words and we would use them within the boxes. So
I was just going to illustrate. So this one, you can have the individual sounds. You have different syllables. Can you see those? I'm thanking for those. Or you can also do the same thing with morphemes. And so you can think about morphological prefix, suffix roots. Put in here, if your word was unbelievable, un would go here, believe would go here, able would go here. So you can breaking it apart in those different multiple ways you could use it. Okay, I just realized that we are at 5:30. You guys had some fantastic contributions. I'll clear all that off. And we just have a few reminders for you. Let me jump to our slide here of reminding you of what we will be doing next time is looking at that language comprehension, vocabulary, morphology, and background knowledge. And we invite you to add something to the Jamboard or to the chat of something that was stood out from you that you want to keep in mind and remember why it's important, and the now what do you hope to do with it? Or as I think Nina said once, rave, crave, and fave. So that would be a fun one as well. So
we should probably go back to the very beginning and put the attendance link
yes,
in.
I will
I
grab
do
that attendance
I got
link.
it.
Thank you. For anybody who missed the attendance link earlier, you only need to sign in once, but you do need to sign in each session so that we have you guys here. All righty, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you all for a great session, very engaging. And I hope you all have a great night.